This story begins in the United States in 2020, a year marked by upheaval and tension, where, in the quiet recesses of our minds, we sometimes entertain dark thoughts about those who wield power over us. For most of us, these thoughts fade as quickly as they arise, leaving no trace. But for one man, the line between thought and action blurred irreversibly, unleashing a chain of events as chilling as it was unimaginable. At the center of this story is Tyrese Haspil, a young man whose life seemed set on an unsteady path from the beginning. Born on January 21, 1999, he grew up in the heart of Brooklyn, New York, where his early years were marked by hardship and struggle. His mother's battles with severe mental health issues cast a shadow over his childhood. Schizophrenia loomed large, bringing with it episodes of violence and isolation that left a lasting impact on Tyrese. Eventually, his mother was committed to a mental health institution, leaving him in the care of his maternal grandmother. But Tyrese's challenges didn't end there. Just as he began adjusting to life with his grandmother, tragedy struck again. His grandmother passed away, leaving him alone at a pivotal moment in his young life. At only 12 years old, and just beginning secondary school, Tyrese found himself adrift, his support system gone, and his sense of stability shattered. After his grandmother's passing, Tyrese's Aunt Marjorie stepped in to care for him, but by then the scars of his past had already begun to shape his behavior. Troubled and rebellious, Tyrese started pushing boundaries. He stayed out late, clashed with authority, and often kept company that steered him further off course. These small rebellions may have seemed minor, but they hinted at deeper issues simmering beneath the surface. Tyrese's Aunt Marjorie would later recount how he had grown distant, often displaying a cold, emotionless demeanor and behaving with a disregard for rules, as if the world owed him something. But there was another side to Tyrese as well. He was bright and talented, particularly in academics. He even won first place in a national web design competition, showing a spark of potential that hinted at a promising future. Tyrese's talent did not go unnoticed. His success in the web design competition caught the eye of Fahim Saleh, a tech entrepreneur and CEO of GoCarda, a groundbreaking ride-hailing app for motorcycle taxis in Nigeria similar to Uber, but tailored for the unique challenges of the region. Fahim saw potential in the young Tyrese, believing he could shape his talent into something remarkable. Fahim saw something special in Tyrese and took a chance on him, offering him the role of personal assistant at just 16, a rare opportunity for someone so young. Tyrese held this position through his high school years and beyond, gaining first-hand exposure to the fast-paced world of tech startups. Yet, despite this golden opportunity, the same troubling behaviors lingered, hinting at a darker side Tyrese couldn't quite shake. Tyrese's behavior took a toll on those around him, especially his Aunt Marjorie, who had stood by him through difficult times. But as his actions became more disruptive and his attitude colder, she found herself unable to handle it any longer. After he finished his studies, Marjorie made the difficult decision to ask him to leave, later saying, "I just couldn't deal with it anymore." At 17, Tyrese entered the child services system and was placed with a foster family. But instead of finding stability, he grew even more defiant, his resentment deepening as he grappled with a lifetime of unresolved trauma. The cycle of anger and discontent only worsened when, at 18, he received the news that his biological father had passed away, another blow that seemed to push him further into isolation and bitterness. In 2017, Tyrese enrolled at Hofstra University, hoping further education might provide a way forward. But his time there was short-lived. Financial struggles had always haunted him, as he had lived close to the breadline with little support for most of his life. The weight of these burdens soon became too heavy, leading him to abandon his studies. Although Tyrese had a steady job with Fahim, the pressure of mounting student loans and the struggle to balance work with his studies became overwhelming. Unable to keep up, he made the difficult decision to leave university after his freshman year. With education no longer an option, he poured his focus into his role at Gokada, hoping it might provide the stability he desperately sought. Yet, despite this new focus, Tyrese's troubled past lingered, casting a shadow over his actions. With a sense of entitlement and nothing left to lose, he began to exploit his position at Gokada. His behavior soon sparked tension between him and Fahim, a conflict that would ultimately spiral into something far darker. But first, to understand the gravity of what unfolded, we must look at Fahim's journey. Fahim's story began with a journey of opportunity. As a young child, his parents moved to the United States in search of a better life, eventually settling in New York City. It was here, alongside his two sisters, that Fahim grew up and discovered his remarkable gift for technology. Even as a child, he created simple web applications for his family, some for fun, others with real practical value. His talent was undeniable, a spark that hinted at the innovations he would bring to life. By high school, Fahim's talent had blossomed into full-fledged entrepreneurship. He launched a social networking site for teenagers, teenhangout.com, a platform reminiscent of Messenger in its heyday. At its peak, the site generated a remarkable $200,000 a year, though it eventually succumbed to the pressures of a competitive market. Around this time, Fahim also acquired the domain prankdeal.com, combining his love for technology with his mischievous side, a move that would later become one of his most lucrative ventures. Following his high school graduation in 2005, Fahim pursued a degree in computer information systems, fully committing to his passion for technology. But by the time he graduated in 2009, the world was in the midst of an economic downturn, with job opportunities scarce. Struggling to find stable employment, Fahim turned back to one of his earlier ideas, prankdeal.com. To his surprise, the site's popularity skyrocketed, eventually generating an astonishing $10 million, solidifying his place as a creative force in tech. Fahim was more than just a tech genius with a knack for business. He was charismatic, witty, and full of life. Friends described him as eternally optimistic, supportive, and someone who saw potential everywhere he looked. With the success of prankdeal.com and other ventures, Fahim began focusing his resources on projects with social impact. In 2015, he set his sights on his parents' native country of Bangladesh, identifying an opportunity to create something meaningful. Partnering with a like-minded entrepreneur, Fahim co-founded Pathao, a ride-sharing company in Bangladesh that quickly grew into a vital service, eventually reaching a valuation of over $100 million. Inspired by this success, he set his sights on Nigeria, launching Gokada in 2018 to provide similar ride-hailing services. But in 2020, Gokada faced a massive setback when the Nigerian government banned motorcycle taxis, dealing a heavy blow to Fahim's vision.
You know, as an entrepreneur, I'm never gonna give up, because that's the true attribute of an entrepreneur, never giving up. But this has definitely been a blow. Entrepreneurs are the ones...
By this time, Fahim's net worth had soared, with a combined valuation of $150 million across his ventures and a personal fortune of $6 million. Friends affectionately dubbed him the Elon Musk of the developing world, a testament to his relentless drive and innovative spirit. His success afforded him a taste of luxury, including a $2.2 million apartment in Manhattan's trendy East Houston Street, a symbol of his hard-earned place in the big city. But what led to such a tragic and untimely end for Fahim? During his time as Fahim's assistant, Tyrese began to abuse the trust placed in him. His responsibilities were broad, running personal errands, organizing Fahim's demanding schedule, and crucially, managing various financial tasks. This role gave Tyrese access to Fahim's personal and business accounts, a privilege that he would soon exploit in unimaginable ways. By September 2018, Tyrese's betrayal began in earnest. He covertly embezzled funds from Fahim's accounts, funneling money into his own through a fraudulent PayPal account. To maintain his facade, he provided fake statements, relying on the trust Fahim had placed in him to cover his tracks. What began as small acts of theft would soon spiral into a shocking betrayal of the man who had once believed in him. Tyrese dreamed of becoming a tech entrepreneur like Fahim, but he lacked the resources, the skills, and ultimately the morals to achieve his ambitions honestly. So instead, he chose a path of deceit, siphoning money from Fahim to fund his own desires. Among his indulgences, he spent lavishly on gifts for his French girlfriend, Marine, a taste of the lifestyle he craved but hadn't earned. By December 2018, Tyrese's scheme took an even darker turn. He registered a fake LLC to funnel larger sums into his own pockets, disguising the transactions to appear legitimate. 6 months later, in May 2019, he resigned from his position as Fahim's assistant, but stepping away from the role didn't end his deceit. Tyrese continued his embezzlement from the shadows, determined to milk the scheme for all it was worth. Tyrese's theft continued undetected for months, but by January 2020, Fahim began to notice discrepancies. Unaware of the full extent of the embezzlement, he believed the missing sum to be around $35,000. Rather than go to the authorities, Fahim chose a compassionate approach. He reached out to Tyrese personally, hoping to resolve the matter quietly. Fahim confronted Tyrese about the theft, but showing remarkable restraint, offered him a payment plan rather than involving the police. Fahim still saw potential in Tyrese, viewing him as a misguided protégé in need of guidance. Tragically, this act of mercy proved to be a fatal mistake, as Fahim was unaware of the elaborate web of deceit Tyrese had spun or just how deeply he had been betrayed. Tyrese agreed to the payment plan, committing to pay Fahim back over 2 years. Desperate to avoid prison and fearful of losing his girlfriend, Marine, if she discovered the truth, he played along. But Tyrese's repayment was yet another deception. He began paying Fahim back using Fahim's own money, siphoned through his intricate scheme. The total amount Tyrese embezzled from Fahim is uncertain, though estimates place it around $400,000. As the stolen funds piled up, so did Tyrese's anxiety. He lived in constant fear that Fahim would uncover the full scope of his betrayal, setting off a chain of events that would likely end in prosecution and the collapse of his carefully constructed life, including the risk of losing Marine. As the threat of exposure grew, Tyrese's desperation morphed into something far darker. Determined to silence Fahim permanently, he fixated on a deadly solution. Obsessed with the plan, Tyrese began tracking Fahim's every move, using social media to keep tabs on his location. In March 2020, he went so far as to follow Fahim to Nigeria, armed with a knife and a grim resolve to end his life though. Fortunately, the opportunity never arose. Back in New York, Tyrese's dark intentions only intensified. Twice, he tracked Fahim to Hopewell Junction, hoping to ambush him while he was out on a run. But each time, the perfect moment eluded him. By May 2020, Tyrese's obsession reached a chilling new level as he meticulously plotted Fahim's murder, leaving nothing to chance. Tyrese launched into an exhaustive research campaign, determined to make Fahim's murder appear like the work of a professional assassin. He hoped to throw investigators off course, leading them to believe that Fahim's death was tied to his international business dealings. Tyrese studied various methods of killing, including the use of tasers and other weapons, carefully calculating every detail to ensure his plan would unfold without a trace. Tyrese meticulously researched cleaning products to cover his tracks, aiming to leave no trace behind. His internet searches grew disturbingly specific. His second-to-last search focused on human anatomy, particularly vulnerable areas like the neck, as he prepared to carry out his deadly plan with precision. Tyrese's final search was for the layout of Fahim's East Houston Street apartment building, which he studied intently, memorizing every detail. On June 17, 2020, he visited a Home Depot and bought the supplies he'd need to execute his plan, including contractor-grade refuse bags, a floor cleaning tool, and a Makita electric saw, items chosen with cold, calculated purpose. To complete his disguise, Tyrese purchased clothing designed to conceal his identity: a black custom three-piece suit, an opaque mask, gloves, and a hooded garment described by witnesses as either resembling a ninja hood or the sinister shroud of the Grim Reaper. His preparations extended beyond attire. He even secured a spot in an apartment building directly across the street from Fahim's residence to monitor his every move. Tyrese reached out to a real estate broker about a vacant apartment directly across from Fahim's building. Securing access, he copied the keys, giving himself entry whenever he wanted. From this vantage point, he installed Nest cameras aimed at Fahim's apartment, setting up 24-hour surveillance to track his every movement with chilling precision. Tyrese didn't plan to kill Fahim in a moment of rage or impulsive violence. He approached his goal with a disturbing calm and methodical precision. Every step was calculated, every detail considered. He wanted the murder to be clinical, meticulously planned to give him the best possible chance of escaping without a trace. As he meticulously plotted Fahim's assassination, Tyrese was equally fixated on how to enjoy the spoils of his theft. He began planning an extravagant birthday celebration for his girlfriend, Maureen, sparing no expense. He booked a private yacht and reserved a luxurious Airbnb in Soho for late July, indulging in a fantasy of wealth funded by deception and betrayal. In early July, Tyrese was spotted buying an extravagant birthday cake, festive balloons, and designer clothing, sparing no expense for the upcoming celebration. All of these luxuries were purchased using Fahim's credit card, adding insult to injury. With the party plans secured, only one step remained: executing his final, deadly plan. All Tyrese needed now was the perfect moment. On July 13, 2020, he saw his chance. Fahim had gone out for a morning run. Wasting no time, Tyrese headed to Fahim's apartment building, slipping into the lobby at 8:30 a.m. by following closely behind another unsuspecting resident. Tyrese quietly entered the stairwell, positioning himself out of sight, waiting with unsettling patience. Dressed in his custom black three-piece suit and carrying both a suitcase and a duffel bag, he projected an air of professionalism. But hidden within this facade, he had an opaque mask, gloves, and a hood, along with a taser and a knife, tools for the deadly task he had planned. Resembling an ominous figure from the shadows, Tyrese waited with cold determination for Fahim's return. At 1:40 p.m., CCTV footage captured Fahim entering the elevator to head up to his apartment, followed swiftly by a second man slipping in behind him, masked and ready to strike. Tyrese was aware that the elevator led directly into Fahim's apartment, so timing was crucial. He slipped in just as Fahim pressed his floor, using the key fob. Now fully cloaked in his disguise, Tyrese's ominous presence immediately raised Fahim's suspicions. But in the confined space of the elevator, there was little Fahim could do. He was trapped with a man who bore deadly intent. Fahim's only thought was to exit the elevator as quickly as possible. As the doors slid open, he stepped out, but Tyrese was right behind him, immediately striking with a taser to Fahim's back. The shock sent Fahim collapsing to the floor, immobilized. Tiny anti-felon identification discs, released by the taser, scattered across the floor like confetti, marking the beginning of a horrific scene. Tyrese stood over his spasming body and proceeded to stab him with his blade in the neck and torso over and over again. Fahim was killed in a matter of seconds. Tyrese did his research. He knew tasers now release anti-felon identification discs once discharged. This is so every discharge can be traced by criminal investigators. So when he finished his horrific assassination of his ex-boss, he got out his mini vacuum cleaner and cleaned the scene of the discs. At 3 p.m., Tyrese left Fahim's apartment and took an Uber to Jersey City. He chose this location because his research indicated that the Hudson River is particularly deep there, making it the perfect place to dispose of any incriminating evidence. Tyrese then went back to the flat on the 14th of July. This was his planned cleanup day. He needed to dispose of Fahim's remains. He started up the Makita electric saw and proceeded to cut Fahim's body into several parts. He decapitated Fahim, placing his head into a heavy-duty disposal bag. He dismembered all 4 of his limbs by making cuts to the softer areas of the human body. He cut at the shoulder joints and just below the knee joint. He placed his limbs into separate bags, leaving behind a well-contained pool of blood surrounding Fahim's still-clothed torso. Like in most cases, murderers cannot account for all of the scenarios they may come up against. And in this case, one thing Tyrese did not research was the battery life of the saw. When the battery ran out, he quickly headed out to a depot and purchased a replacement. All he had left to do was to finish cutting up the torso and clean the crime scene. But whilst he was out at the store looking for a battery, Fahim's cousin came to check on him since she hadn't heard anything from him in over 24 hours, which was highly unusual. She was worried that something wasn't right. His cousin made her way up to the 7th floor, where she was met with a horrific crime scene and her worst nightmare. She found her cousin's dismembered and decapitated torso surrounded by a pool of blood. She called the police, who arrived at the scene almost immediately. When Tyrese returned to the apartment, he noticed that the authorities had arrived. After seeing the police at the apartment, Tyrese went straight back to purchasing items for his girlfriend's birthday. Nonchalant, without a care in the world, he continued his life as if everything was totally normal. He spent the following 3 days embezzling as much money as he possibly could in preparation for his girlfriend's birthday celebrations. At the same time, he was searching online for terms like dismembered body, Fahim, and murder of a tech CEO in New York. A few days later, Tyrese and Maureen went on their planned luxurious Airbnb trip. However, their holiday was abruptly interrupted on the 17th of July 2020 when a task force of armed police stormed into the residence and arrested Tyrese. The police investigation had found critical evidence, including traces of the Taser Idaho confetti, CCTV footage, and a receipt for the Home Depot purchases used in the crime. Tyrese was charged with first-degree murder. At the trial, he pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder, a charge carrying a potential sentence of 20 years to life. Instead, his legal team pursued a manslaughter defense, arguing that Tyrese was emotionally disturbed and sought a lighter sentence of 5 to 25 years. The initial trial was adjourned on the 21st of January 2021, as the defense's strategy prompted a more thorough examination of Tyrese's mental state and background. The case was subsequently taken up by the Supreme Court, where judges meticulously reviewed the evidence and arguments presented. Despite the defense's efforts to portray Tyrese as emotionally disturbed due to his challenging upbringing, the judges concluded that the murder of Fahim was premeditated and carried out with calculated intent. The evidence, including the Taser Idaho confetti, CCTV footage, and the receipts, painted a clear picture of Tyrese's deliberate actions leading up to the murder and following the murder. On the 24th of June 2024, Tyrese was convicted of all charges, including first-degree murder, burglary, tampering with physical evidence, and the concealment of a human corpse. His sentence is scheduled for the 10th of September 2024, where he faces the possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison. Fahim's family's statement conveyed their grief, but also highlighted his positive qualities and achievements. They also described his murder as nothing short of evil, and emphasized the senseless and horrific nature of the crime. The family continues to highlight Fahim's optimistic outlook and remarkable entrepreneurial skills. Fahim had no wife or children and left behind several businesses and a substantial fortune. His sister requested the court to appoint her the administrator of his estate. She was granted permission to manage $4 million from his estate. Fahim's family has expressed their desire to uphold the culture Fahim had established in his businesses and to pursue the success that he had envisioned. Fahim's ambitions, which were tragically cut short, remain a testament to his remarkable legacy